Trump had intel reports on Charlottesville. He knew that the Atomwaffen division was the ones behind the protests in Charlottesville, marching around General Lee. When Trump decided to admire and garnish his admiration for General Lee after the Charlottesville incident, Trump said there's nothing wrong with the alt-rights. And these are the same people that believes in using terrorism with dirty bombs, nuclear bombs, that were behind Charlottesville. Trump knew the intel reports. When they came to Philadelphia, it was to surround and take over the Constitution for 2020. And Trump knew all of this intel of his factions of Confederates in his base and Nazi leaders in his base. When he said the alt-rights are not to blame, it's the alt-lefts, meaning black people and white people that sympathize with blacks, Antifas. So Trump can't hide from the truth. He can't hide from the truth. He's trying to make this country a bigoted country against blacks, Hispanics, Arabs, even Native Americans and Asians. These people believe that we will not replace them as American citizens, that we will not replace them as America first, that we will not replace them as commanding the heights of power with Trump. And Trump knew this Atomwaffen division was behind Charlottesville. Like I said, they came over to Philadelphia and marched around City Hall about to plot to take over the Constitution for 2020. When Giuliani, because they already knew his base, there was chatter that Trump was going to overtake the elections in 2020. Anyway, so I created technologies that would safeguard the popular vote of this nation, that will never let people like Trump rise up to power again. For that, I created technology to safeguard the elections in this nation, from the grassroots all the way up to the federal presidential elections. Because we cannot let the popular vote be undermined. They call it the delegates for Trump. They ignored Hillary Clinton's 3 million popular votes. By the Constitution, bipartisanly, the victory goes to whoever has the most popular votes. And they denied Hillary that constitutional victory. Bipartisanly, the delegates based in the Constitution, they will have to obey regardless of partisanship affiliations. They will have to go with the popular vote. They violated that for Hillary Clinton. The college delegates for Trump ignored the popular vote for 2016. They were trying to subjugate us in our inner cities throughout this country as blacks, Hispanics, because they know we will rebel against a union under Trump. And that's why Trump wanted to impose martial law. And he was using Michael Flynn, Giuliani, and Sidney Powell to do that. Of all peoples, this delusional, demented leader believes in the QAnon follower, aka Q, or may I say Michael Flynn. And they wanted to impose martial laws on the inner cities throughout this country. Trump did, because he knew that Hispanics and Africans will rebel against his trying to deny us 7 million votes that are minority votes, that are Democrat registered minority votes. And so that's for 3 years at his rallies. Ever since 2016, when his Chicago rally got closed down because his white racist supporters were alienating and physically assaulting black people that were only trying to get awareness to civil rights at his Chicago rally. Trump got embarrassed that the Secret Service had to usher him out to the back of the stadium underneath a gate, ran over an open sewer, and into his limousine. He was embarrassed that that was caught on camera in his rallies in Chicago in 2016. So he had a grudge against black people ever since. And for 3 years, when the sports players of all the NFL players, the football players, the basketball players, when they were kneeling and praying Like Martin Luther King kneeled and prayed for civil rights awareness, Trump kept on for 3 years at his rallies. These are unpatriotic son of a bitches. They're disrespecting the flag. But then when Charlottesville happened, the chief and commander is adoring General Lee at his rallies. Right after Charlottesville, did you notice that he jumped on stage at his rallies and kept on saying General Lee was a great general. He knew how to fight wars. Right after Charlottesville, when he said that alt-rights are not to blame, it's the alt-lefts, meaning Black Lives Matter and Antifas, white people that sympathizes with the plights of Africans, Latinos, Arabs, with the plight of minorities in this nation under the yoke of a leader like Trump with his fascism. Trump Jr. went to Kentucky to because Kentucky decided to abolish the Confederate state flag as being their state flag. They decided to uh, redesign their flags as a state flag, and Trump Jr. traveled over there. It was around Charlottesville, the same time Trump was Senior was talking about General Lee at his rallies. Right after Nazis were marching around defending the statue of General Lee, saying that you will not replace us as minorities. We will not replace them. That they're willing to ignore our popular votes. Anyway, Trump Jr. went to Kentucky. He said about the Confederate flag. They asked him, "What do you think about the Confederate flag being abolished as a state flag?" And Trump Jr. said, he said on camera, he said, "I don't see what the big hoopla was about. It's part of a proud tradition. There's nothing wrong with tradition." Knowing that Charlottesville Nazis, terrorist Atomwaffen divisions, the alt-rights, that Trump says they were well behaved. It was the alt-left to blame. To stand down and stand by. Anyway, these people, the Confederates, and the Nazis that marched behind the Ku Klux Klan members, Trump had the reports ever since 2016 when he was sworn in after they violated Hillary Clinton's popular votes. And they swear them in. He knew the FBI kept him abreast about the rise of white supremacy in this nation underneath his base. And how he's supposed to at least take a strong stance and expel them from his rallies, expel them from his race, from his campaign rally trails. But Trump doesn't take a strong stance. He turns a blind eye. You know what he said about white Nazis, white extremist terrorist militias that wanted to kidnap the governor from Michigan? He was in the White House talking about because remember when the coronavirus broke out, that they had every day they had White House press briefings. Well, one reporter asked Trump, "Well, how do you feel?" Because Charlottesville just happened when the coronavirus was mandates for closure was happening. These Nazi white terrorist militias wanted to kidnap the governor and execute her, and the FBI had reports on Trump's deaths. But you know what Trump said to the reporter in the White House? He said, the reporter asked him, what do you think about these extreme armed militias plotting to kidnap the governor? Or no, plotting to occupy the governor's mansion. So what do you think about these white militias they're occupying the governor's mansion? And Trump knew that the FBI was saying that these people wanted to kidnap her and execute her. He knew that. But in that White House press conference, when he was having the coronavirus press out at the White House every day. So when the reporter asked him that question about the militias in the Michigan governor's mansion, Trump said out his mouth, "These are people that love our country. These are patriots. They want to see our country open back up." Knowing that the FBI knew what was going on with those militias and those terror cells trying to kidnap her and execute her. The same thing he said about January 6th. He said, "Go home, people." In other words, he's like thanking them for almost overthrowing the government. He was in the White House obsessing, and this got leaked out in a report, but he was in the White House glowing, watching the news, bragging about how he's about to take this country back. He was in the White House. They had to talk him down before he was able to go out and give an announcement to his supporters to go home. But he was in the White House glowing, watching the news in real time, the cable news network, and glowing and bragging about how he's going to take this country back. These are people. And Trump is not stupid. For 4 years, he had the intel reports of the FBI on his desk. But he still decided to support them, to defend them. Even when the reporters asked him questions, what do you think about the armed militias occupying the governor's mansion? Knowing that he had the FBI reports that they wanted a kidnapper and executor, and these are people that are affiliated with white extremist militias, Trump decided to come out to his mouth, say, these people love our country, they're patriots, they're trying to open this government back up for business. Remember when Trump was in the White House saying we should open up in time for Easter? But around that time, he said that to a reporter as far as these white militias in the governor's mansion, calling them patriots, knowing that the FBI had reports on his desk that these are terrorist organizations that are planning to kidnap the governor of Michigan and execute her. He didn't have no quorums when they were trying to hang Mike Pence. He even said, when a reporter asked him, what do you think about your supporters wanting to hang Mike Pence? Trump came out of his mouth, he said, I can see why they wanted to do that. I can see why, he said. In other words, he could relate to the people that wanted to hang his vice president. So for these reasons, for all the 4 years of the Trump madness mega rallies, I came up with a technology that I reached out to members of Congress to phase in before 2024, to avoid Trump abusing the college electoral system and denying the popular votes of minorities in this nation. So I came up with technologies for that reason that uses forensics. So when people register and vote, they use their own forensics, fingerprints, their eye retina, their face recognition, even voice recognition. So people like Trump cannot lie his way to a coup d'etat. So the American citizens, when we register to vote, nobody can deny us our votes. And when our popular voices scream out for civil rights, nobody can drown us. Not no Sidney Powell, not no Giuliani, not no Michael Flynn can impose no armies upon us. And I'm going to tell you how deep-rooted this racism go. We have a Secretary, African American, the first African American Secretary of Defense of the Pentagon. And if I'm not mistaken, there's 8 military bases that are still named after the Confederate in honor of people like General Lee. Because Congress has to vote bipartisanly to pass a bill to abolish the Confederate name in honor of the Confederacy in the Pentagon. So you got the first African American general, secretary of the Pentagon, and the Republicans refuse to abolish the Confederate name bases in honor of Confederates, in honor of slave holders, in honor of people that march like Nazis in Charlottesville, in honor of people that raise up Confederate flags and defend their ancestors that enslaved Africans. You know, the alt-rights are not to blame. It's the alt-lefts. Trump said he's not willing to abolish the Confederate name bases. It's part of a proud tradition. So that's the irony of this republic. That's the irony. That we have the first African Secretary of the Pentagon in the history of this union. And the Republicans are not willing to abolish the Confederate name bases in honor, adoring people that put SWAT stickers on, people that tattoo themselves with KKK, people that march behind the Confederacy, the Star Spangled Banner, along with the Nazi flags, people that said that the alt-rights are not to blame, it's the alt-lefts. That's the irony of politics in this republic. It's deep-rooted within the Republican Party. And then they say, we want y'all to abolish the Confederate name 8 bases in the Pentagon are named after the Confederacy. We want you to abolish it. And Trump kept on saying, no, that's part of a proud tradition. While Trump Jr. was in Kentucky saying it's part of a proud tradition, there's nothing wrong with tradition. That's how deep rooted that the Republicans have an African American that's willing to fight and defend this nation, but they keep him subjugated underneath a symbolism of white supremacy, because the Republicans don't want to vote bipartisanly with the Democrats and abolish that type of symbolism in this nation. When Trump kept on adoring General Lee statues right after Charlottesville, you got to understand, for 3 years before Charlottesville, Trump was belittling African American civil rights. Ever since the Chicago rally in 2016, all the way up through Trump saying that sports players for kneeling and praying are unpatriotic son of a bitches. And he kept on saying that at his rallies. They're disrespecting the flag. And then Charlottesville happened. But the riots broke out because of Trump subjugating civil rights of African Americans in this nation for 3 years. And you know the side of the argument that Trump stood on. Historians will know the side of the arguments that Trump stood on. So, for that reason, we can't let these Republicans go up the deep end and deny the wills of minorities in this nation. So I created an amendment to pass, so people that register to vote all the way down from the grassroots all the way up to the presidential elections, people will be able to register with their own fingerprints, with their own face recognition and retina recognitions. You will be able to use your register to vote, and nobody can deny you your vote, because there will be a paper trail along with your forensics. So people like Trump and Giuliani and Sidney Powell and Michael Flynn, or AKA Q, won't impose martial law and let this white republic get out of control.